All right, looks like we're live. Give me a second, guys, because I've got to add in the Mile High Huddle Facebook group over that way. Love those guys over that way. Lots of good discussion over there. So if you guys aren't a part of that, make sure you guys check that out. And it looks like we're good to go. Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, dude, we just got done talking to Scott behind the scenes, man. The Super Bowl halftime show. Dude, that was so awesome. I'm not gonna lie. It's not necessarily the music I listen to on a daily basis, but to like do the throwback, still Dre, you got Snoop Dogg in there. You've got 50 Cent hanging upside down from the rafters. I mean, he looks like 60 Cent, but 50 Cent is actually his name. The Eminem part at the end there, Mary J. Blige was killing it, dude. So much nostalgia, just great music to listen to. What was your thoughts on the Super Bowl? And also, man, how you doing?
I mean, I love the halftime show. I watched the first half of the game just because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss the halftime show. Once it was announced, I was super hyped for it. I mean, I listened to Dr. Dre, to Snoop, to Eminem quite often. I could have done without Mary J. Blige. I could have done without not 50 Cent, but the other one, Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah,
I never even heard of him until this announcement. I know he's kind of newer school rap hip hop, and I'm just not a big fan of the new school stuff. 50 Cent I liked. I mean, so I was super hyped for it. I really enjoyed it. We sat down when my wife got home from work, and we watched it together again, and it was just still super entertaining. And the game itself, man, like the first half, I was super bored. Like I was so bored through the first half. I turned it off after this halftime show, and then like I started seeing that stuff. The tweets popping up about how exciting the second half was kind of getting. And man, I got really frustrated about was it Tyler Boyd with the face mask on Jalen Ramsey on the big touchdown? Like that was upsetting, but hey, the Rams got the call back with that weird bad pass interference call against Logan Wilson.
Yep.
So like penalties kind of ended up balancing out a little bit and ended up being a good game. I'm happy with the results. I'm glad Von Miller got his second ring. I'm glad Matthew Stafford got his ring, like Aaron Donald. I'm glad he got his ring. So I was happy with the results. And overall, I enjoyed what I saw of the game, but definitely was glad that I didn't sit down and waste my whole day to watch the whole game.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. So after the was it T. Higgins or whichever one, the big face mask penalty on the touchdown, they went down and scored a touchdown right there. And then the Rams turned around and gave the ball right back. I'm like, here we go. Cincinnati actually has a chance to win this game. And they couldn't do anything with it. They gave it right back. And then, of course, you know, Matthew Stafford doing his thing at the end of the game there, driving him down, big touchdown pass. I believe it's a Cooper Kupp to take the lead there. My stepson Jace was crushed at that particular moment. He was just completely heartbroken and damn near inconsolable. It actually got pretty bad. We'll get into that in another time. But yeah, it was a great game. It was a lot of fun. It shows you like desperately. I mean, you can have all the talent in the world and an elite player at the quarterback position, but if you don't have the offensive line to protect him, then you're going to struggle. I mean, 7 sacks. Aaron Donald had 2. I believe Von Miller had 2. That linebacker, I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, had another one there. Burrow played amazingly for what it was. A lot of quick reads and stuff like that. But Matthew Stafford just kind of hanging around and driving down. That's the elite level quarterback play you need to have in crunch time. Like in the biggest moments, you need your quarterback to step up, go to your biggest players and just continue to make plays. And like out of everything that you could take away, protect your quarterback and then also have a guy that can go and make the biggest plays in the biggest moments, because without those two things, you're not getting into that game ever again. Like quite honestly, I mean, you can see Stafford come back around to it, but Burrow, unless they build an offensive line for him, it could be hard to get there.
I'm not saying I disagree, but I don't fully agree with what you're saying. Like,
right.
There's so many issues on the Rams that Matthew Stafford had to overcome. They're one of the worst running offenses all season long, and they weren't having any success. So many injuries to his playmakers at wide receiver and tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, losing Odell Beckham Jr. in the game and having to rely on Ben Skowronek or whatever, how you say his name, like big things. I mean, he still had Cooper Kupp, who, in my opinion, was very deserving of the Super Bowl MVP. And like Joe Burrow, like he has the weapons. They still need to make a solid offensive line. Doesn't have to be a great thing. Like if as long as you have the quarterback, you can overcome a lot. You still have to have some pieces around him, and I think that often gets lost in the conversation of, oh, without a quarterback, you're not competing. Is that you still have to have other pieces. It's just the quarterback can overcome so much. We saw that with the Peyton Manning teams. He overcame so much, but there can be a time when the deficiencies around him showed up.
Yep.
And so with so many other quarterbacks, with John Elway for all the Super Bowls that he lost, is eventually those deficiencies show up no matter how good the quarterback is. It's just how good can the quarterback overcome it to get you into the race. And with the Bengals, I mean, Joe Burrow was good enough to get them into the race, get them to that game, and the deficiencies that they had just weren't overcomable. Not against a guy like Aaron Donald, who would have been the only other option really for Super Bowl MVP in that game.
Yeah, the way he took over the second half after the offensive lineman for Cincinnati went and punched him in the face multiple times towards the end of the first half, chasing Joe Burrow out of bounds and everything. Don't poke the bear, guys. Like, that's the best defensive player in football, arguably the best player in football right now. And he deserved all of the credit that he got for that. And hopefully he doesn't retire. There's rumblings running about right now that he could be on his way out of the NFL, which would be an absolute shame. But enough about the Super Bowl, guys. You guys are watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast, where we cover the Denver Broncos here. And guys, you guys can follow us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel, also for Scott Kennedy, who is behind the glass tonight running the ones and twos, at Scout Kennedy. Also, guys, while you are at it, make sure you guys are following at Mile High Huddle. That's some other account where you guys are going to get breaking news and analysis, opinion articles, film breakdowns, anything regarding your Denver Broncos. That's where you guys are going to get it. And if you guys are on Facebook, make sure you go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and click that blue Become a Supporter button. It's a great way to get premium content like the Trickle Zone, which is coming with all of the premium draft content. You'll get Kelberman's Corner as well, and also Broncos Book Club with Chad Jensen. Now, with that, guys, we're going to say hello to some people in the chat here. We have Lawrence, who dropped some stars on Facebook. Just want to say hey to you, buddy. It has a question here as well, I think. Yeah. What can the NFL do for all these penalties going on? Man, full-time, those officials, just make them full-time. That's the easiest way to do that. But even then, it's not going to change.
I was going to say, even then, if you make them full-time, is that really going to make a difference in how many penalties are called? So much of it is just super subjective.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you got to imagine these guys are running 20 miles an hour plus. I mean, some of these guys 22, 23 miles an hour in full gear. Like, you know how fast this game happens? It's incredibly difficult to see all of these things, and breaking it down slow motion play, but like frame by frame on every single play basis, you can see so much more. So you got to give the guys at least a little bit of credit. Now, if it's egregious, then that's a completely different conversation. But anyways, guys, 2 weeks from, I believe it's Tuesday, is the start of the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis. So today we're going to be talking about defensive players. We're going to break down the defense this week. Next week, we're going to break down the offensive side of the football. Talking about players specifically for the Denver Broncos, guys that kind of fit what the Broncos are going to be running this year, fitting some of the needs that the Broncos potentially have outside of the quarterback position, interior defensive linemen today, edge defenders, linebackers, cornerback as well. Maybe not so much the safeties. We'll get into that if we have some time, but those are the four positions we're really going to take a look at. Black Knight, Jeremy, jumping in here on Twitch. So here's a question for you guys. Would you rather have Trevor Penning or Treylon Burks? I'm assuming at number 9 overall. Erick, what do you think, man? That's a tough question.
It is tough. Provided that Denver still has a first round pick, which likely means no trade for a veteran quarterback, which means that there's Jerry Jeudy still likely on the team, then Trevor Penning.
Yeah.
Just because he's right there with Treylon Burks on my board, and he fills a bigger position of need. I think he's super scheme versatile. I like his attitude. I've spoken to some people who his attitude from the Senior Bowl was kind of a little bit much for them, or not necessarily his attitude, his ferocity was a little bit much for them. I really like him. I've been a big fan of him for a while. He did drop a little bit. He's no longer in my top 12, but he's still in my top 20. Big fan of him. I like what he can bring for the Broncos. I hope he can bring stability at the right tackle position that the Broncos need. And also, Black Knight, I saw you also mentioned about the late night show from us with Chad and working on it. Like, keep trying. It's something that I really want to do. I just doubt it'll ever happen.
Yeah, we can keep hoping for sure. We can definitely keep hoping. And maybe one of these days we'll convince him to do it and have some fun with that. But for now, you get just regular DVD with me, enjoying myself, Eric enjoying himself. But anyways, guys, so I heard an interesting take the other day, and it actually kind of rings true. NFL rosters are not 53-man rosters. They're 1 plus 52, where the quarterback position is, where everything starts. Like, you have to have the elite quarterback. However, if you're building a roster the correct way, you need to build from the inside out. So we're talking in the trenches. Like, your trench play matters the most. Being able to run the football and protect the quarterback, and then also on the other side, being able to stop the run and go sack the quarterback. So we're going to start off this conversation on the interior defensive line, guys that are at the scouting combine. Obviously, everybody knows who Jordan Davis is, the big interior defensive lineman for the Georgia Bulldogs. There's a lot of top 15 love with him. There's some potential love to him going to number 9 overall with the Denver Broncos. Kind of limited in what he's able to do, but still at the same time, a very intriguing player. Eric, at the combine, what could you potentially look at him that could nail him down as a top 15 pick?
I mean, just being a extraordinary athlete, testing extremely well in that department, going all like Dontari Poe on the combine, like being that big, that heavy, and just running out of the building, like just showing elite athleticism would probably cement him there. Because guess what? If you have that, then you're going to bet on that upside for his ability to get it after the quarterback and not be just a limited 2-gap run defender that so many seem to think he is.
Yeah.
I think it offers up a little bit more of a pass rush than others, but there's still limitations there that we've seen on tape. So if he does that, I mean, teams like to bet on athleticism. They like to bet on power because the football aspect of things you can always coach.
Yeah. Something, it doesn't necessarily matter to me because you can lift weights all day and have that, just straight physical strength. There's more so an aspect of functional strength and how you use the strength that you do have to move that weight around, being able to use your hands the right way and stuff, push and pull and do the swim moves and have athleticism to be able to use that strength in the right way. But man, I'm intrigued to see how many times this kid can push up 225. Like, I really am. I think he could probably go over 40. Like, he's going to potentially push the combine record. This dude's strong as Knox, man. He's also, 380 some odd pounds or something like that. He's huge. This guy's gigantic. And you can see it on tape, too. He does a really good job of getting underneath the people's offensive linemen's pad levels. He works well against double teams. He pushes people back, and then he can rip and swipe and then, get after the passer and that kind of an aspect. So to see the amount of strength that he has, just to put that into a number where it's 225 pounds, that's a lot, guys. Like, if he's going to push up, 45 or 50 reps potentially, I'm curious to see if he's actually going to do it. Travis Weber jumping in here. Good evening, Lance and Eric in Broncos country. How would you guys feel if Denver did keep the number 9 pick and went corner again and drafted Ahmad Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, since we could possibly be depleted in the defensive backs? Eric, what do you think on Sauce Gardner here?
I like Sauce Gardner. If he's the top corner available, then I'd be fine with it. I mean, you're looking at losing Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan. Michael Ojemudia hasn't shown enough to bet on him. Ronald Darby has played 1 full season in his career. Patrick Surtain hopefully doesn't have that sophomore slump. Hopefully he's able to continue this upward trend. So it's not only you're losing a couple guys, you're still unproven. You still have medical concerns. So adding another guy, even though it's another unproven aspect, adding another piece to this corner room is something that I think has to be done. I think that they will look at trying to keep possibly one of Callahan or Fuller, with more of a preference for Callahan. But that still gives you medical concerns with it. So, yeah, I'd be fine with it. I like Sauce Gardner quite a bit. He's not a top 10 player for me, but, I mean, after you get past, the top few, it's just so clustered that where they are in, top 10, top 20 isn't a major big deal to me this year, not like other years.
Yeah. To me, don't get me wrong, I love Sauce Gardner and the ability to have 2 press man cornerbacks on the outside in Pat Surtain and Sauce Gardner. That's great to have. Another thing, you also have Ronald Darby, who plays primarily on the outside anyways. So he may not be the best press man coverage corner, but he's a really good, just straight up man coverage corner. to me, I think that the versatility that you can get out of Patrick Surtain and putting him in the slot a little bit, it's not going to be the best with his change of direction ability because he doesn't necessarily have that very, very much. But the physicality that you have with him, if you want to run straight 3 good length cornerbacks that you have that could potentially play some press, Sauce Gardner would be a good pick there. Stingley as well. If you wanted to go Derek Stingley Jr. and bet on the injury upside and everything like that, you could definitely go in that direction. But Andrew Booth is a guy that really intrigues me. I think that there's some more versatility with him, and that would be the direction that I would go over either of Stingley or Sauce Gardner. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, with Stingley, there's a lot of injury stuff going about him. I mean, multiple big-time media people, Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, the guys over at the Draft Network, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, and multiple others have consistently hit on this topic of the injuries with Derek Stingley, that when he's on the field, taking plays off, effort's not fully there, that in rehab to come back from injuries, he wasn't like the most motivated person. So those are a lot of concerns for me. And it's not like I mentioned him on here before and those concerns and like the Caleb Farley treatment from last year. Yeah. Well, Caleb Farley, he was at least pushing himself to get back out there on the field, pushing himself in rehab and stuff like that. And the concerns with Stingley is that's not the case. Right. So the injuries are similar there, but big difference. And this, we have a picture of number 99 is Jordan Davis. We were just talking about him. And number 95 is Devontae Wyatt, who's got pretty good size for an interior defensive lineman, just to show how massive Jordan Davis is. And it's just insane how big he is. There was another picture of him circulating around a while back of him and standing with one of the coaches. And the coach the top of his head wasn't even past Jordan Davis's shoulders. It's just insane how massive that dude is.
Yeah, Devontae Wyatt's like 6'1", 310, 315, something like that. He's a big dude. And Jordan Davis, for the people that weren't watching this live or listening after the fact or just listening on audio later, Jordan Davis is head and shoulders taller than Devontae Wyatt is. He's like 6'7", 360, 370, something like that. Just massive human being. And there's not an ounce of fat on him. It's almost like looking at Aaron Donald, but 6'8". Like, it's just completely ripped. This guy's a monster. It's crazy to think about that. And Devontae Wyatt 6'3". Scott coming in after the fact. Devontae Wyatt is 6'3", and Jordan Davis is standing head and shoulders over the top of him in that picture. It's just wild how big that guy is. Now, getting back to it all here, a couple of other interesting names. Obviously, you have both of the Alabama guys that are going to be at the combine in Fedarian Mathis and LeBrian Ray. You also have Perion Winfrey, who we took in a mock draft a couple of weeks ago. Another guy
give me Perion Winfrey. I would take him on this Broncos team. Like, oh yeah, he could be something. He could be special on this Broncos defense.
Yes, absolutely, he could. Another guy, and Eric, this is one that you've been pounding the table for a while. I guess not really pounding the table, but you just keep mentioning him in our group chat all the time. You've mentioned him here on DVDD as well. Is Travis Jones, the nose tackle, kind of 1-tech, 3-tech kind of a kid from the University of Connecticut. This kid, again, like Jordan Davis, is just a bull. He's not quite as there's not very many people on this planet that are as big as Jordan Davis is, but Travis Jones is a guy who dominated the Senior Bowl. We've got some clips coming up here for you guys as well. Big, strong, athletic, get some big dip into him. Powerful hands, violent hands, big at the strike point, can handle double teams. Like, this kid's phenomenal, man. Out of the three, if you're going to take Perion Winfrey, Travis Jones, or let's just throw in Fedarian Mathis there, which is the one that you think fits the best on this team? And which one would you be in that, like, where would you go if you had the choice to go with that?
Travis Jones and Perion Winfrey. I mean, Perion Winfrey and Travis Jones are two very different style defensive linemen. Fedarian Mathis is somewhere kind of in between the two. Jordan Davis is just an inside guy. I think Travis Jones has a little bit more versatility to play along the line. Not the most versatile. He's like 6'3", 330-ish, somewhere around there off the top of my head. So he's got good size. He's got good strength. He's really athletic for his size, can push the pocket, and has some moves to get after the quarterback. And I trust him in those regards a little bit more than Jordan Davis. But Perion Winfrey, if you're looking for a standard 4 technique, 5 technique, like, there you go. And he's a guy who, if he's not getting after the quarterback, he's going to be patient. He's going to watch the quarterback's eyes, and he's going to go for the batted pass at the line of scrimmage. He's really improved in his technique. Last year, during the 2020 season, wasn't a big fan of Perrion Winfrey. I was really low on him, and he took a huge step forward this year. Far more consistent with his technique, far more consistent against the run, and just being able to allowing him to shoot gaps and get after the quarterback, create problems in the backfield, like pairing him opposite of Draymond Jones, even if he's coming in as a depth piece behind Shelby Harris for this year, like I'd be all over that. Like Denver needs a piece like that.
Yeah, and shout out to Peter Middleton there. He's talking about taking a right tackle in the first round, cornerback and edge defender in the second round. And if the Broncos don't go and use that ammunition to go and get like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or something like that, I'd be all about that. Fill those needs because those are probably the three biggest needs that this team has, almost in order. Like I think edge defender is probably a bigger need in my opinion. You can go, we've talked about it last week, go get Bobby Massey back, maybe dip into the tackle market a little bit. This tackle class is a little bit deeper. The edge class is as deep as it is, and you can get guys on the second and third day that could come in and potentially be starters. Dip into the top end of this edge class, man, and go get a David Ojabo or Jermaine Johnson, maybe a George Karlaftis. Like there's a lot of guys you can get on day one and then double dip into the back end of day two, or early day three, something like that. But the tackle class, the meat of it really is you've got the top three guys, and Evan Neal, Ike Makwanu, and Charles Cross. And then there's Penning, who's kind of just there. Bernard Raymond, who's, tail end of the first round guy. But the meat of it, you got Max Mitchell. You've got Braxton Jones in there on day two. There's another couple of guys that are escaping me off the top of my head right now. But you can go get a starter at right tackle on day two for sure. So to me, go edge first and then go with right tackle cornerback. Michael jumping in here with a massive stars donation. Wow. Holy cow, Michael. Thank you so much, buddy. Good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Good evening, Broncos country and Scott. Go Broncos from Tucson, Arizona for life. And as always, Michael, we definitely appreciate all of your support, man. Thank you. Let's see. Where are we at here? So let's go back to Devonte Wyatt here, Eric. Devonte Wyatt, what do you think about him for a potential Broncos fit?
I mean, I like him. I really like a lot of the top guys at this interior defensive line class. Wyatt, he's a solid run defender. He's solid. More than solid getting after the quarterback. I question how much upside he really has to be like that, like the top dog on the defensive line. But pairing him with Draymond Jones, you can have two really good players that complement each other very well. And if you can get a big piece in the middle, a guy like somebody a little bit later on, John Ridgeway or somebody like that, to fill the middle and help them on the outside a little bit, help those 4-5 techniques, then Wyatt could be a really good piece in this defensive front. Again, shooting one gap or even playing gap and a half is something that Wyatt can do very well.
Yeah, and it sounds like Ejiro Evero wants to bring in kind of a similar scheme, that 1.5 gap, sticking with a 3-4 base, going obviously nickel a lot here. Going to be very multiple on the front side of the defense. Sounds like he wants to bring some more pressure. So having some guys that can one gap and be penetrators, Wyatt actually fits that role really well. I haven't really broken down John Ridgeway yet, but it sounds like he's another guy that can really get after the passer as far as a one gap interior penetrator. So he did a lot in college. Just how he won, I just don't think is the easiest to translate to the NFL. So I question how consistent he can get after the quarterback in the NFL. I still think he offers up some potential there and some solid and some pretty good run defense. But there's a reason why he's being talked about as an early day 3 or late day 2 option compared to these other big interior defensive linemen, these zero techs like Travis Jones and Jordan Davis. Ridgeway he's just not going to be as good of an athlete as those guys are. Right, absolutely. And like I said, I haven't really broken him down, but the little bit that I have seen with him, you can definitely tell the athleticism with Wyatt, with Travis Jones, even for Darian Mathis, who isn't necessarily the greatest athlete, is probably a little bit better suited for that than John Ridgeway. But there's a lot of technical aspects that I like with John Ridgeway that you can actually work with, and he has the ability to grow and mold. He's still a little bit raw on the inside, so that's a guy that I really like, probably early day 3. If you can get him somewhere just inside the top 100, then you could you probably got a pretty decent player. Shout out to Gary, who had a comment up talking about the edge depth. Want to give him a shout out really fast. And then Travis jumping in here, Travis Weber on Facebook. I like the mocks taking Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd, who played both inside and edge in college. I'm going to jump this off really fast. I do like Devin Lloyd. The tape is hard to not like. I'm with Nick Kendall on this one, though, and Eric, I think you are as well, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Linebacker that high is just a little rich for me, especially with guys like Lloyd where you're not necessarily sure the role that he's going to have. I think you do play him off the ball in this defense and use that athleticism. He's decent in coverage. He's still got some room to grow there, but at 9 overall, you're looking for like a Ray Lewis type or like Devin White or a I don't want to say Devin Bush, but
Devin White's not a good option.
Well,
Devin White's been pretty bad. I mean, if you're getting Fred Warner,
and
you take that top 10. I'm just not sure Devin Lloyd is Fred Warner. I like Devin a lot. He's my top linebacker, and for me, he's still a top 10 player in this draft. It's just the value of his position because he's just going to be an off-ball linebacker in the NFL. He's not going to play off the edge. He may blitz from the inside, but yeah, he's just going to be off-ball. He's good in coverage. With most linebackers, you don't want him caught in the slot against the slot receiver. I mean, otherwise you're going to have a bad day.
Well, I mean, look at what happened in the Rose Bowl with Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly the point. I mean, that's the case with any linebacker. He's smart. He's instinctive. He's got good sideline to sideline range. He's got good speed in his back pedal to get back in coverage. You can do a lot of things with him in coverage. It's just how much value is that? And there's a lot of talking with some people about Evero and basically look for the kind of the base defense for the Broncos to be more 3-3-5 that's looking 5-1-5. And so they want a good athlete at it. And it sounds like that they're just pushing for Baron Browning to kind of be the linebacker. They want to add depth a little bit, but if you're adding a depth piece at linebacker, like not 9 overall, like it just seems that the number 2 linebacker is going to have a lot more limited of a role in the Evero defense than what we saw in Vic Fangio's defense.
Right. And
one difference that we'll have between the two schemes.
And that makes a lot of sense. Peter jumping in here with a great question. How much input will our new coordinators have in choosing free agents and drafting players? I don't know much about this, but I do want to kind of bounce off an idea here. I don't remember who it was that actually kind of incorporated this ideal, but what it was essentially we're going to bring in all of our coordinators and position coaches, and we have the scheme that we want to run, and we want to hear the position coaches is actually the guys you want to talk to. Send your scouts out to find the guys that your position coaches like to coach, the kind of players that you want to have, and then have those guys be a little bit more of a sounding board for you in terms of like where you're going to draft your players, the players you're going to go get in free agency and stuff like that. And then the coordinators say, okay, well, I can use this kind of a skill set. Let's go and kind of take a look at this. It's kind of more of a ladder step approach more than just the general manager and the scouting staff doing everything and then throwing these players at these coaches and say, make chicken salad out of chicken, like there's got to be some input from these coaches and there's got to be some input from these coordinators because players that they know that they have an idea how to use them. That's a big key to me.
Michael Ronquillo came in with another huge stars donation. Thank you, Michael, so much for your continued support, not just for Dove Valley Deep Divers, but for every single one, man.
Holy cow.
Your support is awesome. Having you in here is just always awesome. You always have some good questions when you give them, thank you so much for your support. It means so much to us.
It just set the record for the MHH stars donation right there. Holy cow. That's just insane, man. Michael, thank you, dude. Again, your continued support here is just phenomenal, man. And we definitely appreciate you. And now, Travis showing some love here too, as well, saying Michael Ronquillo has been an absolute all-stars on the stars, not only tonight but over the past several weeks here, dude. Speechless.
Now back to the question about the coordinators. I mean, you never want to give your coordinators players that they don't want. And real quick, Damon Bass came in with some stars. Thank you for joining us, Damon. Thank you for your support as well.
Yeah,
always awesome. Doesn't matter how many stars you give, your support's always appreciated and is always welcome and awesome. But you never want to give your coordinators players that they don't want to work with. That's when you end up seeing a little bit of problems. There's plenty of examples over the years. I'm not going to get into it because I know it's going to just start fights in the chat. But you don't want to do that. So, yeah, you get input from your coaches. You don't want to force players on coaches. you want them to have guys they can work with. You want them to have skill sets that they can use. And just a lot of what Lance was saying is like, you want that from your coaches. You want that input because you don't want your front office and your coaching staff butting heads. You want them working together. And when you have them working together, that helps you build a championship team. You don't want to give your coaches a quarterback they don't want. You don't want to give your coaches wide receivers that they don't really want to use or can use in their scheme because, quite frankly, even more modern coaches, there's a lot of stubbornness with their scheme of that they'll try to fit guys who are square pegs into round holes, trying to make them fit in their scheme when they're just not the best fit in their scheme because they're betting on the athleticism. So they have this whole thing that they kind of have to work around and make work. And it's not easy. If it was easy, then there would be a bunch of people getting paid a bunch of bucks, bunch of money for just being consistently great with it. I mean, even great coaches and general managers, they always have those bad picks. So
yeah,
there's no 100% for sure formula. It's just always a work in progress, always just working together and trying to move forward.
Right. And going back to the schemes and everything with the coordinator specifically, like, these guys watch way more football than we do. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. And they know what they're looking for. They know what they're looking at. They understand the weaknesses and the deficiencies of their team. And, maybe they might be watching another team and saying, hey, look at, like, for example, what the 49ers are doing with Deebo Samuel. I'm Nathaniel Hackett. Hey, I need a guy like that, a guy that's kind of built a little bit thicker in the chest, has the ability to run the football. We can put him out in the slot, throw him outside, send him deep. Just a guy that wears multiple hats, a guy that has a lot of versatility. We can kind of use him more of as like an offensive weapon more than just a specific, you're going to play this and this is going to be your responsibility. We're going to give you the ball in multiple different ways. Treylon Burks, for example, so you're going to go and you're going to say, this is the kind of player that I'm looking for. And you're going to send that out to your scouts. You're going to send it and kind of talk with that with your position coaches. And they're going to go find that player for you. And then you're going to pound the table and say, all right, I need Treylon Burks right now. This offense needs a Treylon Burks, or they need a Calvin Austin from Memphis, or whatever that potentially may be. That's how it should work. It should be a collaborative effort, not just some guy throwing darts at a wall and hoping that something sticks and you actually hit a player that is worth a grain of salt. So I hope that in-depth answer helps get you in the right direction. And I hope we answered your question here.
Wyatt Hunting comes in saying, I'd like to see them trade back from 9 to 15 to 20, the range, to get more draft capital and pick up a right tackle or edge. Then use some capital to trade back up into late first and get the other spot you didn't take with the first pick, either right tackle or the edge. Man, I'm always for trading back. It's always a big thing for me. I'm very much of that belief of the more darts you have to throw, the more likely you are to hit the bullseye. I'm very much of that belief. Trading back this year, that's what I want Denver to do. If they end up having the 9th overall pick, I don't want them making the pick at number 9. I want them to move back, get that capital. I just think that we need to temper our expectations on what that capital is going to be. I don't think Denver's going to get a high pick in 2023 for it. They're not going to get a first round. I don't think they'll get a second round, maybe a third. I think they're more likely to get pretty similar to 2019, to the trade that we got from the Pittsburgh Steelers when they were moving up from 20 to 10. Similar to that, but still a little bit less in overall value coming back just because of how this class is structured. Because even 2019, well, they didn't have like all those elite quarterbacks like we had last year. They had a couple. They were well gone by then, by pick 10, but we still had multiple tier 1 prospects that we just don't have this year. Like tier 1 prospects, if any of them last past 5, then you're probably going to see a bull rush to try to get up into like 5 or into 6, 7, 8 to go get that pick, and you're just not going to be there at 9. Quarterbacks, I mean, maybe a team gets desperate and comes and gives big to try to get up there. Getting up and around these other teams that also maybe want looking at quarterbacks. It's hard to say at this point. I just don't think that what Denver would get in return is going to be as much as we would see in more standard, more typical years with how draft classes are kind of structured.
Yeah. It's funny to me that you mentioned the trade in 2019 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because quite honestly, if there's a team that I'm looking to move with, it would be Pittsburgh, because you know that they're going to be looking at a quarterback. Specifically, I've heard some rumblings around not only Twitter, listening to the radio, some people I've talked with as well privately. The Steelers are really sold on Kenny Pickett. And if Pickett falls to number 9 and he's available there, and you're not sold on Kenny Pickett, let's say you want to trade back, kind of bolster up the roster, you miss out on you miss out on Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, and you still have number 9, and Kenny Pickett's not your guy. Trading back with Pittsburgh actually makes a lot of sense. You already have the rapport there. Well, I guess not really with George Payton. It'd be more so with John Elway, but still, the idea still remains the same. You go and take Pittsburgh for what they're worth. Hopefully they give up a first-round pick for next year. Let them come up and get a quarterback, and then you double down on quarterback in 2023, and you now have 2 first-round picks in 2023. I think you'll probably get a pair of a first and maybe a third out of Pittsburgh for that. So you can potentially move 2 firsts, 2 thirds, move into the top 5 and go get a CJ Stroud. If you can potentially get to number 1 or whatever, like whatever you got to do to go and get a quarterback in 2023 in a better class, or at least what looks like a better class at this point, I'm all about that. But to me, I don't think the Broncos are picking at 9 regardless. Whether they miss out on Rodgers or not, they're not picking at 9. I would almost put money on that they're not going to pick at 9 this year. I really would.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't get Rodgers, they don't get Wilson, they don't get any of those vet quarterbacks, I think that they're using it to move down, get those extra picks, because we know George Payton, he's very much of the philosophy of the more picks you have, the more darts you have to throw, the better the chances are.
Travis jumping in here. Lance, the offensive lineman from Utah you was thinking of last week, was it Nick Ford? No. I still cannot remember his name. Eric, go ahead and take it for a second. Let me look it up really fast. I'll come back to you on that.
But I mean, who it is, it's always questionable, because the thing is the question is Pittsburgh really that enamored with Kenny Pickett? There's been so much going around about Malik Willis with them. I mean, it's the same thing with the Carolina Panthers. I mean, there's been a lot there with Kenny Pickett. There's been a lot there with Matt Corral. There's been a lot there with Malik Willis. And so it's hard to say. Just because a team that's picking, where's Pittsburgh picking? 17, 18, something like that, somewhere? I'm not sure off the top of my head. So just because they're looking at Kenny Pickett doesn't mean he'll be there. I believe that 2 quarterbacks will go in the top 10, and if you want them, you're going to have to give up a lot. And I think that would be a mistake, and I think teams kind of feel the same way, which could keep that from happening. So it's just Pittsburgh's picking at 20. So it's just it's rough at this point to say what's obviously what's going to happen. Draft, you never know. But I mean, Pittsburgh, they're one team to look at. Another team that you could possibly be looking at is Washington. They seem to be really set on going after quarterback this year. Maybe Tampa Bay is looking to move up big with post Tom Brady. Like, there's just so many options. The Saints, as Black Knights, are another option. There's a lot of options for quarterback, for teams needing a quarterback this year, which that could help Denver out. I mean, it could sit there and it could drive the value up to where Denver ends up getting a lot of value in return for moving back. It's just Denver has to have this opinion. Denver will have to give this sense of, we're looking at the quarterbacks if they still have pick number 9, of course, but using that to try to get more, to get teams to throw more at them to move back off of them. Casey Nickel came in with a $20 donation. Thank you, Casey. We appreciate that. As always, all the support from everybody is always appreciative. We're always appreciative. Everyone is dogging on this quarterback class. It is merited. However, it is going to be very interesting to see how this class plays out 3 years from now. It'd be hilarious to see it turn out to be a solid quarterback group, Broncos for life. Yeah, I mean, it's all what you were doing is we're just kind of what we know of them as prospects and kind of projecting them. And the projection of prospects is always where things get iffy. I mean, that's why you see guys who were people dubbed stars, like will be stars in the NFL, end up busting just because one thing or another always happens to it. With how this class is, it wouldn't be surprising if one of these quarterbacks ends up as a long-term starter quarterback. And a couple others, I believe, will hang around the NFL for multiple years.
Yeah.
There is a chance that 3 of them end up being great quarterbacks, great starters. It's just unlikely to happen. Typically, you only get 1 or 2 great starters at most out of a class, and the rest of them are either out of the league within a few years or are basically backups.
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone's like, "Oh, these guys have the potential to be starters in the NFL," and But that's the rub. Like, do they actually have potential to be quality starters in the NFL? Or are we talking about guys like Blaine Gabbert, Nick Foles, or hell, even Drew Lock? I'm going to say his name. Like, they have the opportunity to be a starter in the NFL, but are they actually going to be long-term quality starters? And that's it. That's the difference. And it's going to be interesting. And like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out 3 years from now, because go back to, 2017, I believe is what it was. Deshaun Watson, you had Mitchell Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's like, there's a lot of question marks about these guys. There's a lot of talent here. And there's a couple of guys that could potentially turn into be, quality starters. This class isn't like that. There's some comparisons. You can draw some lines. There's a lot of stuff that you can like. Malik Willis specifically, Matt Corral as well. But are they actually going to turn out to be Patrick Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the NFL, or Deshaun Watson, who, despite all of his legal troubles, is one of the best quarterbacks in the league? Like, that's just, quite honestly, nobody saw that happening. And case in point on this, I believe Mahomes was taken after a huge trade up by the Chiefs at number 10, and Deshaun Watson fell to number 15 overall. Like, that's the area these quarterbacks are likely going to go, because there are so many question marks about those guys translating to the NFL based on the air raid offense that you had at Texas Tech and the quick one reads, a heavy screen play that you got out of Dabo Swinney and Deshaun Watson at Clemson. Like, there's not anything concrete that you can build on with the tools that these guys have this year to make them project as quality starters. So that's the conversation, and that's trying to figure out the finite details and the context of this quarterback class that is so difficult to kind of navigate, especially this year. Peter jumping in here. Actually, let me run back to Travis Weber. He had the question about the Utah offensive lineman. It was Bam Olaseni. He was a right guard, number 77. I like this kid a lot. I cannot wait to break him down next year. Is he in this year's class? Mm-hmm. I thought that he wasn't. He
was really impressive at the Collegiate Bowl. Yeah, I believe is what it was.
Yeah, dude moves. He's got some power to him too. I like him a lot. Peter jumping in here. Third day defensive prospects that you would love the Broncos to get. So let's go into the next part of this conversation, because we've gone 40 minutes and only broken down the interior defensive lineman. Edge defenders here. Erick, let's get to specific quick ones here.
Real quick, let's grab this so we can go back to that get off the quarterbacks. Casey Niff came out with a $10 donation. Josh Allen was a prospect in the draft, but is it just me, or does Kenny Pickett feel like a Josh Allen in the sense of being tall, big, strong, and cold weather quarterback? It's just you. Kenny Pickett, he's not a cold weather quarterback. I mean, he in bad weather at Pittsburgh, he didn't play so well. He's not that strong. He's got small hands. He's not big, not in the same aspect Josh Allen is. He's nowhere near the athlete Josh Allen is. And with Josh Allen, I mean, a lot of us questioned what he was able to do as a quarterback, but he brought enough as an athlete to sit there and just roll with that and just let him run the ball and do these other things. Well, he worked on his mechanics and the other issues. You don't have that with Kenny Pickett. Dude's fumbled 5,000 times in his 8-year career, or however long he's been. I mean, he was really bad throughout the majority of his career to his last year. I mean, he finally settled down and it was a really good year, but still a lot of issues holding on to the ball. I mean, it's just there's a lot of comparisons made with quarterbacks. This is one that I don't see it. I don't see anything close to Josh Allen with Kenny Pickett. There's no quarterback in this class that's close to that Josh Allen prospect. No. Kenny Pickett, I mean, if you want the comparison for him, Teddy Two Gloves. I mean, there it is. That's your Kenny Pickett comparison.
Boring. It's bad because it's more athletic, but boring. Teddy Bridgewater. It really is. Anyway, so back to it here. Edge defenders. Obviously, we've talked about the big names, Karlaftis, Aiden Hutchinson, who the Broncos aren't going to be able to even smell. Kayvon Thibodeau, they're not going to be able to touch him. You could see David Ojabo, Jermaine Johnson, potentially in the top 10 there. I don't, as much as I would love to go get Jermaine Johnson or Ojabo, maybe George Karlaftis in the first round. There's a handful of guys that you can get in the second and third round. Erick, I'm going to kind of leave it up to you here. I've got Nick Benito here as well, Josh Paschal from Kentucky, Majai Sanders as well, a guy I know you like is a lot, but there's some head case issues going on with him, and Sam Williams. Alex Wright is getting a lot of love out of UAB here lately. There's a handful of guys that you can get at the edge position on day 2 and day 3. What do you think about this edge defender class?
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about Alex Wright because I don't want to get the Matt Miller, issues that are going on there. But no, I mean, Dane Brugler was on Alex Wright a while ago, and he actually listened to him reading what Dane Brugler does, brought Alex Wright to my attention, and there's a lot to like there. For me, he's right on the cusp of being a top 100 pick. Sam Williams, I mean, talking about the combine, one of the big things with combine is interviews, and there is so much Sam Williams has to answer for in the interviews. That's going to be something that it's like to try to help my evaluation of it is I'm going to be asking around and using hearsay and secondhand information to try to figure something out, which is very risky to do. There's just so many questions for it. With the Nick Benito, like, where is he really going to play in the NFL? He's kind of this hybrid type. So they all have questions for him. There's a lot of guys I like, but real quick, Casey came in, $10 donation saying thank you and everything, and we appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I've seen all sorts of quarterback comparisons made on Twitter. Some of them are good. Some of them be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then other ones like, well, what? And I saw the Kenny Pickett, Josh Allen one. I saw it like 3 weeks ago. And I remember I believe it was in the group chat with Nick Kendall. I remember talking about it with Nick, and both of us were just kind of like face palming at it. But anyways, back to the question with the edges. There was an edge that was on the top of my tongue that you didn't mention. That's a guy that I really like, in kind of the day 2 aspect.
Well, obviously, Boye Mafe is one that we talked about multiple different times.
Cameron Thomas was the other one. Like,
okay,
I'm a big fan of Boye Mafe. Like, dude's athletic. I mean, he's got solid technique. He's got everything that you can work with as a coach. Like, I'm such a big fan of his. I have been for a while. I remember I was watching a different defensive lineman or linebacker on Minnesota, and I ended up having to watch the same games over because I just kept focusing in on Boye Mafe. And then Cameron Thomas, like, I'm a huge fan of his coming out of San Diego State.
Yeah,
I think it's San Diego State. I always get him, and I believe, and him, not Logan Hall. Yeah, he's San Diego State because Cade Hall is San Jose State. And
San Jose State, yeah.
So San Diego State for Cameron Thomas. I mean, he just dominated his whoever he faced against. Like, if you're an offensive tackle and you're playing San Diego State, I mean, were just in for a bad day. Like, it didn't matter. Like, he was just going to just go out there, beat away at you, get after the quarterback, make plays in the backfield. I think that he's got a lot of upside. I think he's one of those of the high-end edge rushers. He's the one that really seems to be flying under the radar, in my opinion. Huge fan of Cameron Thomas.
So we had a question earlier. I think it was from R. Powell, who's been a tremendous supporter of the show. I can't remember who, so if I got the name wrong, I do apologize. They were asking specifically, why is DeMarvin Leal not a really good fit for this Broncos team? And there's a lot to like there. He's strong on the edge, sets a pretty good edge in the running game. Not a whole lot as a pass rusher, but you can develop some of the tools that he has. Long, strong, full of piss and vinegar, but there's some scheme limitations. Eric, and you brought this up to me, and I actually agree with you. DeMarvin Leal, speak to
him. Where do you want to play him at? Like, he's limited, but at the same time, he's not limited. If you're playing him more on the outside as a 7 technique, like, fine, like, that's great. You can do that. You can see him success. You want him with his hand in the dirt. Helps him with his get off a little bit more. He brings a little bit more pop into contact that way than when he's standing and working out of a 2-point stance.
I just had the like an epiphany here, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this one or not. He is more athletic AJ Epinesa. Fight me. Like, seriously, like, he's got a better get off, more athleticism, a little bit more bend, but he's AJ Epinesa. He's not big enough to play on the inside of the 5.
I think AJ Epinesa had a little bit more power to handle moving inside a little bit, being a more 5 technique. I think if you move in DeMarvin Leal against the run, specifically inside as a 5 technique, 4 technique, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
As a pass rusher, I think using his quickness, stunting him inside from a 7-point stance or a 7 technique and a 3-point stance, then he can be effective. You can even, on certain situations and obvious passing downs, move him into 3 technique and see him cross the face of guards, crossing the center, getting after the quarterback that way. DeMarvin Leal's a good pass rush prospect, really good pass rush prospect. I just don't know if he has what it takes to be a consistent run defender, and you're going to want to put him in a position and run obvious running situations to limit the negative impact that he's going to bring.
No. Jeff Noyes says, time to go. Good night, everybody. Good night, Jeff. Hopefully you catch the rest of the show some other time, and we appreciate you for joining us. We appreciate everybody for joining us. Black Knight, Dylan as well, CC, Jeff, Peter, everybody that's joined in and jumped into the conversation. Let's move this conversation forward just a little bit here and go to the off-ball linebacker prospects. There's a handful here that this linebacker class is actually pretty stacked. Like, there's a lot of guys to like here. Guys that wear some multiple hats. There's some athletic guys that are going to be limited in the NFL because of their athleticism. A guy that we're going to see here at the combine in Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, kind of limited as far as the athlete goes, but it plays pretty heady, hits his landmarks, does pretty decently in coverage, but there's some length concerns there. There's some athleticism concerns there as well. Troy Anderson from Montana State, who is an athletic freak. You want to talk about 2 polar opposite kinds of players as far as athleticism goes. Look at Brian Anderson Brian Asamoah and Troy Anderson, excuse me. You got Terrell Bernard, Damon Clark, the top names in Nicole Dean and Devin Lloyd. There's Nate Landman from Colorado. That's a local favorite that has some decent athleticism. And I actually like him as a run defender. Let me take that back. Not the greatest athlete, but there's something to work with. Great downhill run defender is a big thing with him. Jojo Doman as well. Chad Muma, Erick's dude from Wyoming. Like, there's a lot to like here, Erick. What do you think about this NFL Combine class at the linebacker position?
Nate Landman, like, special team only linebacker at best. Like, keep him away from defense. I don't like what he offers up there for the NFL. Great college Buffalo, like, great doing it in college. Being great in college doesn't mean it's going to be great in the NFL. Jojo out of Nebraska is a guy who's very interesting to me because he was basically their slot corner this last year. At 230 pounds, he's quick, he's agile. Like, you want a guy who can sit there and potentially be this cover linebacker, there you go. I mean, he's so much fun to watch, which is nice because I haven't had a fun Nebraska prospect to watch in a long time. And he was probably, I mean, since I know there's a rivalry between them too. I mean, it's more fun watching him than any Iowa prospect I've watched for a couple of years too. I got to make sure I let Nick know of that one too. But no, Jojo Doman, I mean, I'm a big fan of him. I like what he brings. He's moving up the more I watch of him a little bit. I'm not fully done in my study of him a little bit. Another couple linebackers that I like Nicole Dean. I know that there's a lot of talk that he's going to come in below 220 pounds. People are questioning his ability to cover linebackers. Well, I think he'll be able to do it just fine. I'm more concerned about him at that weight of coming downhill against the run. I like Quay Walker a little bit. Chad Muma, I've talked about quite a lot on here as being a big fan of him and what he can bring. I like this linebacker class. It's one of my favorite classes overall in this draft. Like, it's not, you don't have elite talent, but you have a couple really good top talents, and then you have really good depth at it.
Peter Middleton jumping in here saying the Broncos didn't choose someone from Alabama for years until recently. Are there other big college teams that the Broncos seem to never draft from? Off the top of my head, I don't remember the last time the Broncos drafted a Clemson Tiger. Like, it's George Foster, maybe? Like, honestly, I think that might be the last one. It's been a long time since they've drafted someone from Clemson. I know they had Jarvis Moss from Florida. Obviously, last year they tapped into Ohio State. I think they had an Oklahoma kid there as well. I mean,
there's always going to be like some time between drafting a prospect, just because, first of all, do they have one? Does that team have a good prospect that year? Does it fall to them? What does
Right.
it
Yeah.
do? Like, there's so many variables in it. And it was like the whole thing with Alabama was just a situation of like the prospects just weren't there where they were comfortable taking them. Because I remember that there was a year where Denver really liked an Alabama prospect and he just didn't fall to them.
It was Reggie Ragland or CJ Mosley. It was CJ Mosley. They were all in on CJ Mosley, the linebacker.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I mean, it's been a while since they've drafted from multiple schools because, I mean, well over 100 schools, 100 colleges putting prospects forward, and you have maybe at most roughly 10 picks. Sometimes you can get a little bit closer to 15, but that's just very rare. So it just doesn't happen for a while. I wish that the streak for drafting from Iowa was a little bit longer.
It does seem they go to the Iowa well more often than not. I will say that.
I'd say something nice about Iowa, but I know it'd get back to Nick, and I just can't have that.
Well, I can't say that. I can't say that on the air. There's something there's a joke that runs around Iowa, but we can't say that one online. Our pal jumping in here. What about what input do you guys have on Darien Beavers, the linebacker from Cincinnati? I like him. Moves okay. Probably more 2-down linebacker coming downhill. You're not going to have him in coverage very often. I don't think he has the athleticism to survive. Scrapes well, tackles well, but for the most part, probably not a guy that Denver is going to be looking at unless they're just kind of looking to bolster special teams. If you can get him early day 3, maybe in the 4th round, then I'd be all right with it. But I'm not a huge fan of Beavers as far as coverage linebackers go. And you need that athleticism, and Beavers just doesn't have it.
So real quick, you said about Clemson. The last time they drafted a Clemson player was Bryant McNeil, a defensive end in 2013. And they actually had back-to-back picks from Clemson on the defensive line, with Nick Eason being the pick before that. 14 picks between the two of them.
That's a good find, and thank you for that. So 2013, that's a long time.
2003.
2003, sorry. I thought you said 2013.
I may have. It's supposed to be 2003. Hawaii, I mean, I don't think they've drafted one since Ashley Lee. Anyways,
yeah, that's 2000.
Getting sidetracked here with Beavers. Talking about Beavers here. If this was about 15, 20 years ago, Beavers is a 1st-round pick.
Yep.
Like, he just fits that old school style linebacker. I think he could do all right now. I think the instincts there are enough, and the awareness is good enough that he can do well and not necessarily thrive, but be a consistent performer as a starter on defense. But there's a lot you have to overcome. I like that he can bring some good ability on special teams as well, punt return and kick return. But it's just depends on what you're doing defensively. You want to be more of an old school traditional 4-3 front, which NFL is shifting away from more and more every single year. So it's not just how much value can he bring now, how much value can he bring throughout the rest of the rookie contract. And that's just a little bit of concern I have there with Beavers. I like him. I like that he's kind of a tone setter on defense.
Yeah. Quick question here. Quick breakdown. Nephi Sewell. I believe he's Penei Sewell's younger brother, plays at Utah, linebacker. Not a great athlete. I just want your quick thoughts on him.
Ask me again sometime when I actually get around to watching to him, because he's a guy that I just don't think that he's going to be drafted.
I don't think he's going to either. It was just a name that I had recognized on the combine list. Could do well for himself by running well, but just no.
I mean, I've caught a little bit of him watching Lloyd, and he's okay, but I haven't focused in on him enough to really have not necessarily a concrete opinion. But
all right, quick breakdown here. We're at 58 minutes. We can run just a few minutes. We got to be done before 10 after the hour, so we're 7:02 right now. Let's break down some cornerbacks really fast.
Well, real quick here, I just want to grab this from Eddie. Eric, when they draft Linderbaum, we'll have to deal with it. If they draft Linderbaum, it means another Iowa player's gone. Denver has a limit on how many Iowa players they have. I'm convinced of it. They've never broken like 5 or 6 Iowa players on their roster.
Watch it be Michael Ojemudia, because they're going to take it. Yeah. He is a free agent. That's true.
But Dino actually asked, what are your thoughts on drafting OL in the first round? I like Linderbaum and Cross. I mean, I'm all for bolstering the offensive line. I like Linderbaum, improve the center position. I like Cross for what the defense are doing. I was watching a Cross game earlier, and it was rough. And it was one. It's like if you have Cross as offensive tackle one, that's a game that you probably should look at, and not necessarily reevaluate your full opinion on him, but just like it was a rough showing from Charlie Cross. That really shows all these issues he has: handling strength, handling power. Because I've never thought he was the strongest. He's just really good athlete, and he just was really iffy with his reads, lack of effort when he was moving to the outside too, really poor attempts climbing to this, like a lot of issues from Charlie Cross in that game.
One of the biggest things with Charlie Cross is I hate to call a guy that's going to be like going to play professional football soft. But you want to talk about a player that plays soft. He doesn't look for contact running down the field. He's not the best run blocker. In pass protection, if you get a good bull rush against him, he backs off. He doesn't have the great technique to deal with. Like, he doesn't drop his ass and anchor. Like, there are some things about Charles Cross. Like, there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of athleticism. He does really well as far as his hand placement and stuff goes. But, man, I don't want to call him soft because that's not like it's like calling a player a bum. Like, you don't want to say that to their face, but damn it, Charles Cross has issues there for sure as far as playing with elite physicality. Let's just put it that way, because he's not a physical player. He's just not. He's a finesse player. He likes to move out in space and kind of just pitter pat and stuff like that. He's not a guy to go stuff his nose into your chest plate and drive you into the ground. You never see those blocks with him. You just never do. And that to me is an issue.
Yeah, there was one play in this game. I can't remember off the top of my head what team they were playing, but he dealt with a speed to power conversion from a defensive lineman that landed a really strong punch on him. And it was like in a video game when you stun somebody in a fight and they're just kind of standing there. Like, it was a good 5 seconds of Cross not moving, not reacting, not doing anything. And by the time he reacted, the quarterback was already in the move, having to escape from the pressure. Like, it was rough.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of athleticism, a lot of tools to work with Cross, but I'm not sure that I'd put him in the top 10. I really don't. Like, just because I see those physicality issues with him, and it's something to me. Like, it really is something to me. Like, I like him. I like him as far as pass protection, his footwork, his athleticism goes. There's that physicality. You have to be willing to go and hit somebody in this game, especially at the NFL level, because if you don't, you're going to be Andre Dillard. Like, I think that's your comparison for him, right? Andre Dillard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he is not good, not good. So
I think he's more athletic and more technical sound than Andre Dillard, but I think that he has more issues with strength and power than Andre Dillard did.
Yeah. Yep. Damn, I wanted to get into these cornerbacks. Quickly, Eric, we've talked about Sauce. We've talked about all the top guys. Booth, Roger McCreary, we haven't got into yet today, but it's probably going to be out of the Broncos' range unless they want to trade back. Couple of day 2 guys that you like, and then we'll wrap this up and get out of here.
I really like Martin Emerson. The more I've watched of him out of Mississippi State, I believe, off the top of my head.
Yep.
But I mean, we talked about him a lot a couple weeks ago when we did the mock draft. Marcus Jones out of Houston. I'm really intrigued to see how big he measures at the combine. There's been a lot of chatter that he's not going to crack 5'7", 180, 170. Like, there's a lot of talk about him being even smaller than a lot of people believe. So I'm kind of curious about that. I mean, I just love what he can bring as a playmaker in the secondary and as a returner. And I love the fact that despite he's small, he doesn't play to his size. He plays much bigger than he is. Mm-hmm. It's just, you're going to have to be very cautious about who you get him mixed up against or matched up against. Kyler Gordon out of Washington's all right. I like Kobe Bryant. Dino kind of just mentioned him from Cincinnati. There's another corner that I like quite a bit too.
CC jumping in here with Tariq Woolen from UTSA. Long, strong, physical, decent mover. I like him.
He's fast.
He's very fast.
Most fluid. Could definitely handle a little bit of issues of power at the point of attack. And
I do
issues with contact through out routes from wide receivers that kind of want to bully him a little bit. So he's a good runner, but there's some other stuff that you kind of got to work on with him.
So there's two guys, and I don't know much about them. I know that one of them actually had a pretty decent Senior Bowl, and another one is, I believe he's the only Division II defensive player. Well, where did I see that? I think I know he's Division II. He might be one of the only Division II players that was actually invited to the combine. Josh Williams from Fayetteville State, and then Sam Webb from Missouri Western State University. Two small school guys that have a potential to be big risers at the combine. This is an opportunity for them to show their athleticism, obviously get measured, and just be put up side by side with some of the big boys. So those are some names to watch. Like I know Josh Williams is actually getting some like 3rd and 4th round love. Like he might actually be a top 100 pick from the sound of it.
Yeah, he's been getting a lot of hype. I guess he showed up really well at the HBCU combine that they had, he showed up to Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he was at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah,
he was at the Senior Bowl.
There was a lot of positive chatter about him coming out of it. Haven't been able to watch him. When you get to small schools like that, like getting the ability to watch some of their games gets really rough. So I haven't really watched him or Sam Webb.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance, obviously, to see either of those guys yet, but I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. There was a lot of chatter about Sam Webb that I was just trying to find out who he was. So maybe day 3 guy, potentially undrafted guy, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this combine all shakes out. But anyways, with that, guys, we definitely got to get out of here. Thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. And thank you again, Michael, for your continued love and support and everything that you do. We definitely appreciate you all for showing up here tonight. You guys can find us on Twitter by following me at Sanderson MHH for Erick, at Erick Trickel. Also, shout out to Scott Kennedy behind the scenes, at Scout Kennedy. Folks, while you're at it, at DVDD_pod, you're going to find out what we're talking about every single week on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. You also have at Mile High Huddle, where you're going to get breaking news and analysis on your Denver Broncos. Film breakdowns, opinion articles, all of our draft content is going to go up there. We're going to be getting you individualized scouting reports coming here probably towards the end of the month. We'll get started rolling all of those out on our top 100 players between me and Erick. So make sure you guys are following at Mile High Huddle for all of that. Facebook users, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click that blue Become a Supporter button so you can get the Trickel Zone every Saturday. You can also get Kelberman's Corner and Broncos Book Club with Chad Jensen. Folks, if you guys are financially able to do so, head on over to huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent where you guys can get all of the swag that you guys need for every single show, including DVDD. You've got Broncos for Breakfast with Scott and Nick. You've got Building the Broncos, Mile High Insiders, also the Huddle Up Podcast, something for the guys, something for the gals, anything to suit your fancy. You guys can find that at huddleuppod.com. And if you guys are not interested in doing so, if you guys are not, financially able to do so, we definitely understand. We appreciate all of your guys' support, but 3 things everybody should be doing is subscribe wherever you guys are watching this, on YouTube specifically, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, does not matter. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like every video you guys see, and if you love it, share it, get it in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible across all social media platforms, because without your guys' support, we could not do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, with that, Erick, quickly, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys for joining. I'll be back with Trickel Zone tomorrow. Hopefully it doesn't get canceled again. Just some family time last week and not being able to do it, and with Valentine's Day coming up, which I hope all of you who celebrate Valentine's Day had a wonderful holiday. But I'm so exhausted. I'm ready to get to sleep. I mean, I've just been between getting draft stuff done and then stuff for D&D. Like, I'm so exhausted. Yeah. But thank you guys for watching us. We'll be back next week. And yeah, I mean, we'll be talking more combine. And I love the draft time of year, but the draft time of year is the year of no sleep for me.
It's the year of no sleep for everybody.
Or the time of no sleep.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But yeah, no sleep. Brain fog is big. Like, getting players mixed up and crossed up is a big thing that I deal with.
If you can't tell, my biggest issue is remembering which players is what from what school. There's so many that I can get so confused. Like, yeah, there's been times where I've been talking about Charles Cross and it's like, What school again? Like, even if I've watched enough of them, like I just can't always remember. I mean, 400 plus players that, like,
Yep. Nah, but anyways, guys, with that, you all stay safe, take care, have a great weekend. Please stay safe. Don't do anything dumb. We want to see you guys back the same time, same place next week on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. And as always, when we get out of here, go Broncos.